Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be tackling something that I think is super interesting and probably way more complex than a lot of people realize. We're going to be looking at the role of logistics coordinator.
That's right. Yeah, it's one of those jobs that really is kind of hidden behind the scenes, but honestly, it's like the glue that holds so much of our world together, when you think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all gotten used to ordering stuff online, expecting it to show up like, magically at our doorstep the next day,
Yeah.
or walking into a store just assuming that everything we need is going to be there on the shelves.
Right. And like, who do you think makes that magic happen? I mean, someone's got to be figuring out how all that stuff gets from wherever it's made or grown to, our local store or our front porch.
Yeah, and that's where our logistics coordinator comes in.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to get a better handle on this, we actually dug into a detailed job description for a logistics coordinator. We talked to some folks who work in the field, and, well, let's just say there's way more to this job than meets the eye.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, you might picture like someone in a warehouse with a clipboard, counting boxes all day.
Exactly. That's totally what I imagined too.
But it's so much more dynamic and strategic than that.
So let's start with something that I think is, probably the most obvious part of the job, at least from an outsider's perspective.
Inventory management.
Okay, yeah.
Now, this is making sure that there's always the right amount of stuff, in the right place at the right time. But I'm guessing it's not quite as simple as it sounds.
Oh, not even close. I mean, imagine like trying to manage the flow of information on the internet, right?
Okay.
There's a ton of data, it's constantly changing, and you got to make sure everything's going where it needs to go.
Right.
That's kind of what a logistics coordinator does, but with physical goods,
Hmm.
it's a ton of data analysis, forecasting demand, tracking shipments across the globe, you name it.
So it's like a giant puzzle, but the pieces are constantly moving. Exactly. And the puzzle can change shape in an instant. A sudden shift in customer demand, a supplier runs into a problem, a storm delays a shipment. These guys got to be ready to adapt.
Okay, so how do they actually deal with that? Like, what kind of strategies do they use?
Well, one of the big ones is what's called just-in-time inventory management. Have you heard of that?
I have, yeah, but I'll admit I'm not totally clear on like how it actually works in practice.
Sure. So basically, the goal is to minimize the amount of stuff you have sitting around in a warehouse, right?
Right.
So you only order or produce what you need when you need it.
To avoid like a bunch of waste or having stuff go bad or become obsolete.
Exactly, yeah. Saves money and, it's more efficient.
That makes sense. But it also sounds risky, right? I mean, what if there's like a sudden surge in demand or a supplier has a delay, something unexpected happens.
Well, yeah, that's where the coordinator's expertise really comes in. I mean, they got to be able to think on their feet. They need to be, incredibly adaptable and come up with creative solutions when, those inevitable hiccups happen.
Which I'm sure they do all the time.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Okay, so we've talked about, managing inventory, but obviously that stuff actually has to get moved from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the transportation side of things.
Yeah.
Like, how do they decide how to get all those goods where they need to go?
Right. Well, they've got to consider a ton of factors. They're negotiating with trucking companies, airlines, freight forwarders, all those folks, always trying to get the best rates, the most efficient routes.
Right.
But it's not just about picking the cheapest option, right? They have to factor in things like speed, reliability, even the environmental impact of different modes of transportation.
Wow. So it's really a complex equation. I mean, it's not just like picking a truck and sending it on its way.
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
And another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that logistics coordinators are often looking for ways to maximize efficiency and cut down on empty trips. Okay, so let's say a truck delivers a bunch of, I don't know, let's say it delivers a bunch of refrigerators to a store, right?
Okay.
Now, instead of that truck just driving back empty, a good coordinator is going to be trying to find another shipment that needs to go in that same direction.
Oh, so they're like kind of like, ride sharing for trucks.
Exactly. It's called a backhaul opportunity, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, it saves money. It's better for the environment. Makes total sense.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got inventory, we've got transportation, and of course, all of this stuff is happening on a timeline.
Yes.
So let's talk about scheduling and, how these coordinators make sure that everything stays on track.
Time is money, especially in the world of logistics, right?
For sure.
Imagine you've got a factory waiting on a shipment of parts. If that shipment gets delayed, the whole production line could shut down.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a nightmare.
Yeah. Or, I don't know, think about like, those limited edition sneakers that everyone's hyped about? If
Mm.
they don't arrive in stores on time, you've got a lot of angry customers on your hands.
And probably some people reselling them for a huge markup.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the logistics coordinator, they're juggling a million schedules. They're dealing with unexpected delays, weather, traffic, all sorts of things, and making sure that, as much as possible, everything stays on track.
So I'm betting communication is a pretty key part of this job.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the lifeblood of logistics, right? They're the
Yeah.
central hub, constantly in touch with everyone. Suppliers, vendors, the trucking companies, internal teams, sometimes even the customers.
So it's a lot of emails, phone calls,
Yeah.
probably a lot of back and forth.
A lot, yeah. And then, of course, there's the whole documentation side of things. You got
Mm.
to keep everything organized. All the paperwork for each shipment has got to be accurate. It's got to be up to date. It's got to be filed correctly.
And I'm guessing one tiny mistake, like a misplaced decimal point on a customs form, could have some pretty big consequences.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A small error in the documentation could mean a shipment gets held up at customs, which costs time and money. So, yeah, attention to detail is absolutely critical in this job.
Okay, so we've covered, inventory, transportation, scheduling, communication, and it all sounds incredibly complicated.
It is. It is. It's a lot to juggle. But on top of all that, you also have to be really good at, cost control and problem solving.
Okay, so like what does that look like in the day-to-day life of a logistics coordinator?
Well, let's say, there's a huge snowstorm and a shipment of produce is, stuck somewhere.
Okay.
Now, the coordinator has to figure out, okay, how do we minimize spoilage? Maybe we need to find an alternate route, a different trucking company, perhaps even a different mode of transportation, and all of that while keeping the costs under control.
No,
Right.
sounds stressful.
It can be, but that's kind of the nature of the job, constantly putting out fires and coming up with creative solutions to keep those goods flowing.
So basically, they're the unsung heroes of getting us, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, they really are.
From our clothes to our food to, our gadgets.
Yeah, and all the stuff in between.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that a good logistics coordinator can actually make a real difference to, like, the bottom line of a company?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. They can help reduce waste. They can optimize transportation costs. They can prevent delays, all of which, translates into saving money for the company.
And potentially even lower prices for consumers.
Right? Exactly. So, yeah, they really do play a vital role in the overall economy.
Wow, so this job really does touch pretty much every part of the business.
It does, yeah. They're working with sales, procurement, production, warehousing. I mean, everybody really.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking, hey, that actually sounds like an interesting career,
Mm.
what kind of skills or, I don't know, personality traits would make someone a good fit for this kind of role?
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, you got to be organized, detail-oriented. I mean, we've talked about that a lot. You can't be afraid of numbers and data.
Right.
But you also got to be a good communicator, a good problem solver, able to think on your feet. You got to be adaptable.
And probably be able to handle a little bit of stress.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, things are always changing. There are always challenges popping up. You got to be able to stay calm under pressure.
Right. Well, this has been super fascinating. I mean, I feel like I had no idea what a logistics coordinator really did before this.
It's one of those jobs that people don't really think about, until something goes wrong.
Right. Like when that package doesn't arrive on time.
Exactly. But even when things are running smoothly, there's a whole team of logistics professionals working behind the scenes to make it all happen.
So to sum up, logistics coordinators, they're the masterminds behind the movement of goods. They're keeping the global supply chain running smoothly. They're saving companies money. They're making sure we get the stuff we need when we need it.
That's a great summary.
So the next time you see a truck on the highway or you order something online or you go to the grocery store, take a moment to appreciate the complex network of logistics that made it all possible.
And the skilled professionals who keep it all moving.
And that is your deep dive into the world of the logistics coordinator.